But Donald Trump has also signed the proclamation to address the effects of copper imports, imposing universal 50% tariff on import of semi-finished copper products and copper-intensive derivative products. Remember, this tariff will be effective from 1st of August. My colleague Kanishka is now joining us to help us understand what this means for world copper market.
Well, good afternoon, Ashesha. Well, copper is back in the spotlight after a major clarification that has come from the White House. Now, while the U.S. will impose 50% tariffs on semi-finished copper products starting August 1st, that is tomorrow, it will not apply the duty to refined copper metal, the most widely imported form of copper. Now, this clarification sent U.S. copper futures on COMEX plunging 20% yesterday, as traders had priced in the worst, expecting tariffs on all copper imports. However, on London Metal Exchange, copper actually gained on relief buying. Now, experts say that a rush of copper shipments to the US ahead of the tariff deadline has created large stockpiles, some of which may now be re-exported. Now, Chile, Canada and Peru, which together supply over 90% of US refined copper, could avoid the worst impact, at least for now. So, quite a bit of relief coming for copper exporters.
That's a relief coming in for copper exporters and importers of copper in the United States. And on the back of this news piece, remember yesterday copper futures on COMEX fell nearly 20%. Although on LME we did see some spike up of nearly 1 to 1.5%. But to discuss this and the latest moves in the oil market, we are now joined by Mr. Anindya Banerjee, Senior Vice President, Head of Commodity and Currency Research at Kotak Securities. Mr. Banerjee, thank you so much for joining us today. First up, your thoughts on the entire drama that's happening globally and its impact on copper now that finished copper has been excluded from this 50% tariff, the 25% tariff. What impact will this have on copper prices globally, both on COMEX and on London Metal Exchange?
A very good afternoon and thank you for having me. Just if step back a little to understand what is happening, we have to connect the dots since Trump got elected last November. And it has been our stance since then that his America First policy is basically a clarion call for reset of the global trade and capital flow order. So what we are seeing is a very messy way of Trump handling that. So that is his style. Now, the issue is the communication which happened in the copper market. Initially, the market was anticipating that this 50% tariff will be across the board, from semi-finished to refined to everything. And that's the reason why we saw a very unusual thing happening in the copper market. LME, Shanghai Futures Exchange, all were copper inventories drawn out, and entire thing was almost heading to America, where the inventory rose to on COMEX to a 21-year high. What happened last night within a couple of minutes was that the reversal of that trade. Now, that's the reason why we have seen a panic plunge. So, for example, the copper premiums on COMEX over LME was as high as 25 to 30%. Now it's almost like 1-2%, and it can go down further, and we won't be surprised if COMEX goes below LME. So this has definitely rattled the market. Now, as far as the price impact is concerned on COMEX, we could see further downside because a lot of people could be stuck with the inventory. Another 5 to 6% downside. Let's say if I talk in terms of COMEX prices, around $4 per pound. On LME terms, if I see another, on LME, we might not see that kind of a fall because, as I said, it was basically a reversal of this trade. But this is what has happened in the copper market. Now, it might take a few weeks for the entire supply chain, the global supply chain in copper to realign, because we will see inventory move out of COMEX into Asia, whether it heads to Shanghai or it heads to the Asian warehouses of the LME. That is secondary, but I think a lot of the inventory will get reallocated.
Okay, so perhaps much of those volumes which were being transported to the United States could be re-exported back to London and to several other exchanges globally, and that will also likely impact copper prices in several exchanges in the Asian market as well. But also wanted your thoughts on the oil market. Today it is trading near that $70 to $73 per barrel mark after that restriction that came in, or the comments from Donald Trump on Russian purchases of oil that are being done by India and several other countries What kind of reaction could that have in the next, say, 15 to 20 days? Do you expect oil to inch higher from the $72 per barrel mark currently?
See, the deadline which Donald Trump has given to Russia is still a week away. Yes, we can see another 3 to 4% rise in the oil prices. So let's say around $73 on the WTI can happen. That is very much a possibility. Now, what is happening in the oil market is very interesting. If we look at the demand and supply, that is the entire market is well supplied, but the geopolitics is what is driving the oil prices, because first it was the fresh new sanctions on Iran which happened a couple of hours back. Now after that, the market has started to price in that we could see fresh sanctions on Russia. So these are two major oil producers, and that's the reason why this kind of a reaction. But we have to understand, anything above 75 on the WTI or 77, 78 on the Brent is unsustainable on a demand and supply uh, perspective. Now, as far as US is concerned, they won't mind a temporary spike in oil prices, because there's been a lot of chatter from the Trump administration that they want to increase the oil output, and various reports suggest that the shale oil producers are seeing a rise in cost of production.
Correct.
So that what would actually be beneficial for them, but that would matter if the oil prices stay at high levels,
Correct.
which is difficult. So I think a temporary spike is on the cards of 3 to 4%, but sustaining it will be quite difficult.
Okay, so temporary spike on the card, but sustaining above that $75, $77 is unsustainable. That's the word coming in. Mr. Banerjee, thank you so much for taking your time out and joining us today and helping us understand what the outlook is for the copper and oil market going forward. Thanks so much for joining us. That's all the time we have on this edition of the show, but before